presentation though. So today's presentation is on why we chose Kontent.ai as our enterprise headless CMS. So the story goes that a few years ago, about 3-4 years ago, Cameron and I were trying to figure out the whole new Jamstack thing, which was gaining popularity at that moment in time, headless CMS, and the whole concept of it was, for me personally, was kind of difficult to understand. Cameron had already been doing some single app, single page websites, as in controlling everything from a JavaScript perspective. But for me, I never did understand it. But we were trying to look at it from the context of we've been doing, all-in-one DXP for a long time. What's the next thing to do and what it needs to have in order for us to adopt it? And this is where the whole journey started. A little bit about
Konobos. All right,
go ahead, Cameron. There's a delay. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, there's a delay. Definitely. Yeah. So yeah, a little bit about Konobos. So we were founded in 2017, and we're a group of digital solution professionals. We've been in this community space for a very, very long time. So actually, I mentioned he's been in this space for close to 15 years. Myself around 13, 14 years in this particular space around the content management system and digital experience platform space. We have been a big part of the community. We love the community. We have been community organizers, user group organizers, conference organizers. We have organized hackathons. I've been moderators on Stack Exchange. We started Slack groups. We enjoy and love just bringing people together and getting people to learn. Our team is across 4 different continents at the moment, so we truly are a global team.
And our mission as a company is to... I'll do this one. Sorry. So our mission is to use the power of the community to build the world's happiest and most effective digital teams and solutions. And this, too, as a team, also includes our customers, friends, community members. Everyone's part of the team. And our values are be kind, be fair, and keep exploring. A little bit about myself. I'm just waiting to see if Cam jumps in because of the delay, but a little bit about ourselves. So myself, I've been doing this for a long time, 26 years in total, and over 15 years, 16 years in the DXP space. I've been MVP for Sitecore as well. Been a 2-time MVP for Kontent.ai. Happens to be one of my favorite headless CMSs at this moment. We're also Kontent.ai's premium partner.
And myself, I have been also in this space for a very, very long time. I'm an 11-time Sitecore MVP, and I'm a Kontent.ai technology MVP. Have really enjoyed being part of this program and getting more of a deep dive and insights and further insights into the roadmap, especially, and giving feedback to those teams on helping to develop the product further.
Cool. And one of our proudest moments this year is because of all the work that we put in. We were kind of like the early adopters of Jamstack and Composable, and we didn't know it was Composable back then. Like we're talking about 3-4 years ago for our customer, American Bath, and we've taken the challenge from the board really to heart, and we were able to come up with the solution to move their brands. They have about 32 brands, 16 of them away from this all-in-one DXP in just 1 year. And it just happens to be extremely well. It's producing quite a few results internally and externally in the company. And along with Kontent.ai, Cloudinary, Vercel, Azure, Salsify, you name it, every single thing that we can, we were able to win the Impact Award from Mark this year. We were in really great company, the WWF, not the wrestling. It's the World Wildlife Foundation, Mars, Primark, Bell Corp, and Alamy. Amazing space to be in with them, but being able to win was a really good feat. It just validated all the efforts from every single part of the team. All right, I'll go.
So let's
Since
get
cameras
into
is
why did we get here? Why?
go on, cameras. There is a delay, but you go on.
Actually, why don't you continue? I'm going to I'm going to let you continue for a minute. I'm going to do a system restart because there's something a bit glitchy, and I'll catch you in a couple of minutes.
All right, no worries. So I'll go. So why did we get here? As I mentioned, the story goes about 4 or 5 years ago. We were trying to figure out what the next thing is, and we were all stuck in an all-in-one DXP world. But there was this murmur on the side about Jamstack. It's fast. It can, it's better for the SEO. Same time, Google was changing its rankings of SEO, like faster sites get higher preference. And the DXP we were involved with, we were seeing constant challenges. And going back to American Bath Group, the board basically said, listen, I'm not going to renew this license. It's too expensive. Infrastructure is getting out of hand. Every time we want to upgrade, it's a new project. And those were some of many challenges facing American Bath Group at that moment. So we started looking at what else do we need to do. So faster time to market, not just for the initial project, bringing a new brand on, thinking about 32, imagine how long that would take, but also changes to be made. Upgrades were a bigger challenge. Faster page loads, yeah, I mean, you can add all the CDNs in the world. You still are not going to get the speed that you can get right now with Vercel or Netlify with an edge-based website, right? So that was something that we were struggling with. Infrastructure costs were crazy, and with every new upgrade, the infrastructure costs were increasing. That was another problem. They just wanted to be able to not have duplicated content or content in all kinds of systems, but be able to have a single source and be able to deliver in multiple channels. So for instance, from an AVG perspective, we have a mobile app, we have kiosks across the United States, as well as multiple websites, which all use the single source of truth, which is content at this moment in time. And the deployments happen in 3.5 minutes for the biggest site that we have, which probably has a few 100,000 pages with languages. But for smaller sites, it takes 1.5 minutes compared to what we used to do before. It's just a fraction of the time. So at the end of the day, that's what we were chasing for. That's what we were told that Jamstack and Composable can offer us. So when we first started, it was actually funny. Cameras and I were reminiscing when we were doing this webinar of what exactly we went through. And back in the day in 2019, we were playing with Jekyll, we were playing with Hugo, we were playing with Netlify CMS, and we were testing it out. We did the Konabos website using Netlify CMS. Again, works really, really well. For that moment in time, it basically stored markdown files, so you didn't really need a headless CMS, but Netlify was able to give you a UI, form-based UI for you to add blogs or modify elements of the page, which was really, really nice. We got a good chance to figure that out. And what we found is, oh my gosh, it's really that easy. Setting it up was easy, using was easy, but it was still a bit developer focused. Like anytime we wanted to do something or elements of the page, sometimes other than the text content and maybe a few images, most of it we had to rely on going back and modifying the theming or the markdown file. So that was a little bit challenging, but got us a good taste of it, help us understand. It made us understand Jamstack and its potential power. And then we started talking to people like MVPs in other areas, other systems. How are you approaching it? Do you see something in here? Like, is this something we should focus on? And to be honest, there were only very few individuals who were open-minded or like open enough to say, yeah, you know what, there are some legs to this. I do see this growing. I see this growing exponentially. But there were a ton of naysayers, same naysayers who later on turned out to be, oh, we love composable. What are you talking about? Space speeds are great, right? But it helped talking to different people in different industries, just to get a sense that there is something to this Jamstack. And at that time, there was no word called composable. Gartner or Forrester hadn't come up with these terms for it, but we were composable. We were using different systems. I remember the first one we built, other than the Netlify CMS, was using Netlify, Contentful, Next.js. We are all .NET developers at that time, so it was kind of hard. But when we did, and we used Azure Tables for data storage, it was a composable system. It was pulling information from different systems and showcasing on the website. So we didn't know it. We just knew it was a Martech stack, but we didn't quite understand that the word composable. But we was like, oh my gosh, this is actually very, very interesting to use, and it's so fast. And it's good that it has evolved so much, right? So we started from markdown files and moved on to maybe a headless CMS and pulling from different sources, realizing that this is what Jamstack is, and in the future it'll be called composable. But being in this IT industry alone, let alone being in Jamstack and composable, it's an ever evolving experience. So you can always make it better. You can always try different systems. One good thing about being in this space is everything is API first, and Cambro says is best. Is like, you do one CMS, you do them all, because when you look at it not from the UI perspective, from an API end, what you consume is very, very similar to any CMS, any headless CMS out there to pull. So experimenting a lot helped us a lot, because we were still like, maybe there's a .NET story to this, and there is. And we were looking at different systems. I forget, it started with an S, a .NET framework, which was very similar to Next in terms of how it built the website, and then it would push static files to Azure at the end. But again, experimenting makes a whole bunch of sense and gives us a lot of tools. Cameras, let's test your thing out.
I'm back now. Is that a little bit better?
A lot better, yeah.
There you go. Just needed a little kick. Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Akshay, for handling that. Yeah, that was fun times. I did. I'm trying to remember the name of that .NET framework, but ultimately, I know we ended up towards Next.js. That was just a language choice, which was a little bit weird for us because we're .NET developers. We really wanted to like that other .NET framework, but we had reasons for doing that, and we can maybe explain that, go into that a little bit later if anyone's interested. But yeah, around this time when we're doing experimenting, we were talking to a lot of people. Lots of people had different ideas around different systems they were using, but none of those quite gelled with us. It wasn't quite the thing that we were really looking for. And then we were both attending a lot of these conferences, Jamstack conferences, and we stumbled upon, almost by accident, this Content by Kentico. They were sponsoring the event, and they had like a little segment in between the sessions where they were like, "Hey, this is our product. This is what we do." And I ended up going out to one of the sponsor breakout rooms, and because it's a virtual event as well, there was barely anyone in there, which actually ended up being great, because I ended up just sitting in there for maybe 30 minutes, just talking to these guys, going over their product, understanding what it does, how it does it, the different features and the functionality. We were able to have a really, really good conversation. And I got back to action. It's like, oh, you got to check out this Content by Kentico. It's really, really awesome. And before I even know it, I get an email on CC from Akshay saying, "Hey, we want to check out your product, and can we jump on a call?" And he was way ahead of me. He's just got ahead and set up his calls to go through it, and that was it, right? That was the first conversation we had with them. And this wasn't the first vendor we'd spoken to, right? We'd been going through a lot, as you said, but I don't know, something about this just fit a lot of the things we were looking for, right, and the features we were looking for.
Yeah. So there's, I remember, and this was really hard because I was cursing cameras every single step of this. He had like non-negotiable list of things he needed this thing to do in order for us to provide this as an option to our customers, because all of our customers, surprisingly, are all enterprise. They all use one or the other all-in-one DXP. So he's like, well, if we are going to propose going to this Jamstack headless thing, it's going to need these things. And he set out the list, and it was painful because every time we would do a POC, not all of them would fit the list. And you're like, oh man, I need this external tool. And like, well, if I'm going to have to buy a headless CMS and an external tool to do this, what's the point, right? And that's where we liked, back then about Content by Kentico, is it fit all of those checkboxes.
Yeah, I think the most obvious one was it needed to be SaaS. It needed to be obviously cloud hosted as a result of that. I didn't want to ever deal with another upgrade again if I could avoid it. I'm sure you didn't, Akshay, and neither did any of the customers, right? We'd all been through upgrade pain. Some of these extremely large projects could take several months to upgrade, and we've been there and done that. And didn't want to be doing that again. And also, I just didn't want to deal with the infrastructure hassles, right? Like scaling it, and this author has this issue because they're in that region, and they have a peak in demand because they're upskilling because of Black Friday or Christmas sales, and this isn't working or that isn't working. It's like, I don't want to deal with that. And then, hey, we just seen this new feature being released. Can we have that as well? It's like, not, yeah, maybe in a few months you can have it after we've done an upgrade. So we wanted, it sounds like a fairly obvious one, but coming from the space we were coming, we were like, yeah, it needs to be SaaS.
Yeah, and the one thing to say though is there's a lot of misconceptions in terms of SaaS. It's how the system is placed, right? So it needs to be such that the core system, if the core system is not modifiable, but yet it gives you the opportunity to make customizations which are external, it makes things easy for the vendor as well as for the person using it. So in our case, just to give you an example, we've been using it for 3 or more than 3 years now. Not one upgrade has affected any of our customers. Not one new feature has affected any of our customers. None of the security patching, scaling, even the infrastructural changes the Kontent.ai team has made has affected us directly. They do let you know. They're like, hey, this is coming. But to be quite honest, from a breaking change perspective, the way they approached it, if there's a new feature and there are breaking changes, to keep the existing, give ample time for people to move to the newer way of doing things, was really, really good. And, that went flawlessly for us. So I am so glad we didn't have to deal with upgrades or changing features or newer versions. They just get rolled out. You get a notification saying, hey, by the way, these are the 15 new features you got today. Click on this link and it will go to wherever you need it to go to. So I'm really, really happy for that. Next slide.
Content authoring experience. And I did post up a little poll a few days back on LinkedIn, and this came up as the top one feature that everybody needs, right? And it's an interesting one because this was a pretty hard and big requirement for us, along with a couple of other ones. But at the time, when we're talking again like 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, this was not a thing in headless CMSs and cloud-based headless CMSs. It was, you have your bucket of items, I'd call it, and you just go in, you enter some content in almost like in a form, almost like an accounting type system, and then you wait, and then it gets deployed, and you get a web page, right? And I kind of get the reasoning for it because it's omni-channel. You don't actually know how the content's going to be used. It could be used in a mobile device, a mobile app, or maybe for your fridge, or maybe for feeding your Tesla. I don't know, right? It's possible they can go to any endpoint. So there's not always a visual representation, but the reality was, especially the customers we were working with, majority of them were web first, right? They were building for their customers on the websites. Some, of course, had mobile apps, and a lot of them had aspirations to have mobile apps, but it wasn't something they were dealing with. And also, they were just not used to this, right? They come from these all-in-one DXPs where an in-page editor and a visualizer and designer is just part of the course, right? It's just what you expect is there, and people expect that to be there. So this was a big attraction for us when we had started working with content. At the time, it was the web spotlight feature. It had the in-page preview and the device previews. I think back then it didn't have the visual editor, right? I may be wrong. I think that came.
It had base capabilities at that moment, but that was the only CMS back then that at least had web spotlight. All the other headless CMS didn't have a visual editor back then. You had to use things like Builder.io and the thing which started with an S, which Netlify bought recently. Stackbit, yeah. Things
and
like
it's interesting because I feel like people are talking about this a lot now, right? In terms of headless CMSs and the visual experience and the authoring experience, and it seems to have come, very much to the forefront. And there's a lot of conversations around that. So, and I'm looking back, I was like, why wouldn't you have this in the CMS?
Yeah. And this was a non-negotiable feature too, because all the authors who we dealt with needed the in-page editing. So like people have different ways of modifying things, right? I like content editor because it's faster. It looks like a form, but you can just run through it, get a piece of content really fast. But not everyone works that way. There's a good, marketers or content authors who like to actually see what they're modifying. So visual editor from our point of view was a non-negotiable, and that was one thing which was really readily available at Kontent.ai, and they've made improvements consistently on it, so you can do it quite a bit right now.
Yeah, so like as I mentioned, I think when we had started, it was just a preview, and there was a little icon that you could click, and that would then go in turn open up the linked content. Now it's much more fully featured. You can actually go in, you can start adding components to your pages. You see those pluses on that page. That will allow you to add components in those spots, and then clicking on those little edit icons will then open up the related item in the sidebar, and you can just edit it there and then hit save, and it will reload all within the in-page editing experience.
Yep. And then this is the being able to find a piece of content, right? And we wanted to highlight that a little bit, because once you start using this and you go back to another system, it just feels very antiquated, because I don't think every author I've spoken to who are true authors, they haven't had anything to do with the build from the customer perspective. They're like, oh my gosh, it's so easy to find things, to filter exactly what you're looking for. They don't even bother looking at it in a tree or anything like that. They just go straight to search, find what they want, click on it, and modify it. And I think that's one of the nicest feature here, because the speed is just amazing.
It's really clean interface as well. I really love the cleanness of it and the easiness of it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that, of course. And here we have a content tree. As much as I do love that other interface, I do feel like when you're building websites, you build things in a hierarchy, right? You're organizing content in a hierarchy. You want it presented in a hierarchy. You want it to drive your menus and your navigation and the way people move around your website, and you want to group related things together, right? This was, again, another feature which I wouldn't say it was non-negotiable, but it was really high up in our wish list, because we were used to this from previous systems. And again, a lot of the systems that we had, pretty much all of the other systems that we'd seen, didn't have this ability to be able to highlight or organize and present the information. I'd say it's probably more to do with presentation than organizing your content and your structure within this kind of tree hierarchy. And this fits in with the web spotlight. This is part of web spotlight. So these work hand in hand with the in-page editor and being able to navigate. So when I have my site up and open in the web spotlight feature, I can click on these pages, I can edit them, I can preview them, I can go to another page, I can edit those, I can preview those, I can publish those directly from within that interface. The interesting thing with that previous screen that we just showed with the assets, the content and the asset list, I think that's how pretty much all or most of the other headless CMSs present their content. So you just have this huge kind of bucket of content, and then it's up to you how you organize it. Having the ability to have both of these things, I think, has been an enormous benefit. And as you mentioned, actually, you like that view of just getting the fields in there, but those content authors are looking at both of these views, right, with the editor and this tree.
Yeah, for sure. And then localization, right? So translation and localization, we've done quite a bit with this in terms of languages, but just being able to have that ability to localize based on collections or projects and have it in multiple languages and having language fallback, all of the features that you're used to from a traditional DXP, we needed the same, if not more, from this perspective. Another thing which kind of hit it out of the park for us was in the integration is what you make of it. So we were able to work in two different modes from a language perspective. Translation, which is automated localization, is you give it context based on the local language. So we had two different modes. For some brands, the customer wanted to localize because they had French-speaking individuals in certain regions. In another sense, they wanted it translated. So we were able to easily hook up with Azure Cognitive Services, push the English content. Every time a change was made, automatically they would get translated, come back, and the changes would be available in every single language. And that was so seamless. We didn't have to, although they are translation providers, localization providers who have deep integration with Kontent.ai, we were able to use what we needed in the ecospace, and it was pretty easy for us to integrate that.
Yep, and it's super easy to just add it in, right? You can just go in, add in whatever languages you want, and then boom, you just have your language variants available for each of those pages. And as you said, it's all hooked into those APIs, very easily hooked into those APIs to do whatever you want with that content.
Absolutely.
Workflows, again, I know all of these seem quite basic, but the flexibility that we found with the workflows in Kontent.ai was really, really amazing compared to some of the other systems we'd seen. You were able to go in and create the exact workflow that you need for your business, and your business units need to work in the way that they need to work. And they're so easy to set up. It's unbelievably easy to set up, right? To the point that I don't think in this one you actually need a developer to go in, right? You could just have your business users go in and let them define the workflow that works for them, the approval stages that they need before something goes live. And the fact that you can also then have different workflows based on the different content types, and then being able to limit each of those steps in the workflow to different security roles, groups and roles was also really, really good. And of course, with those workflows, you can it works really well with the ability at each stage for people to go in, add their comments to that content, and for that to flow through, be able to go through and work on those tasks. You can almost assign it like tasks to say, okay, I want this correction made, that correction made, and it's almost like a task list of things before it can get to the next stage. And that all of that combination of things actually made it really, really nice for the content authoring process, to I think the point where you're no longer having to deal with content separately from the system, right? I mean, I always find it strange when you have a content management system, but you need a different system to then go and manage your content before you actually essentially copy and paste it into the content management and into your CMS. So all of these features, I think, make it work really, really well as an actual system for managing your content, creating your content, putting it through the different workflows that workflows and the approvals that it needs to go through in the business before that piece of content or that campaign actually ends up going live.
Yeah. And then the scheduled publishing part, it's all part and parcel of the system, which is really, really helpful, especially when you're dealing with different geographic regions where you need certain campaigns sent out at a specific period of time and just get it published. Again, very seamless, super simple. Like it's so intuitive that anyone can do it, and we found that as very helpful in terms of getting content out there.
And being able to schedule groups of content. So if you have a campaign running, you're not going to want to just publish that one page. I'm going to want to publish an entire campaign, an entire set of pages, and an entire set of assets as well, right? Media included. So being able to just do that through a super simple interface and just bundling all of that up into a single unit and just say, you know what, I just want all of this published at the same time. Great feature. Really, really great feature.
Yeah. Developer experience.
Now, I know we focused a lot on the content authors, and that had actually come up top on our list of features that we should be looking for, right? The developer experience, at least for us, I mean, we're developers, right? So it is important, right? It is really, really important being able to figure out. Our previous systems that we've been working on them for a very, very long time. It took us a lot of time to gain and set that knowledge, and that was probably one of our fears, right? Like, if we get onto a new system and we start using this new CMS, we're going to have to learn this brand new way of working. We're going to have to learn this brand new technology. You're going to have to learn this. We're going to have to learn that, and obviously a fear for ourselves of not knowing, but also a fear of delivery, right? What are we actually going to deliver? And is it going to be something that we really want to put our name to? Because this is going to be a production site going out for somebody, and it's going to be essentially our first major headless project, right? Outside of our own konabos.com website. So the great thing about headless CMSs is they are typically, let's say, but usually they are API first, and along with that comes documentation first. But the Kontent.ai documentation was really, really great, really fantastic. Kind of handheld you from very first step of clone this repository, do this in the Kontent.ai system, down to walking you through and lots of videos, lots of documentation. The documentation is, as you can see, is not just aimed at developers. It's aimed at developers, content authors, managers, right? So it's quite wide and varying as to where that documentation teaches you.
Yeah, and I can't remember how many times you could just go and figure things out. It's really well laid out. It's not hard at all. There's a lot of training as well that you can go through just to kind of get the hang of it. But from a development perspective, the API documentation is just purely amazing. And I mean, I would say that, like Cameron said, it's pretty common amongst all headless CMSs to have it heavily documented because they do API first. So they do document their APIs really, really well.
Yeah, but even down to the way the documentation is laid out, right? It's not just here's some developer documentation. If you have a look along the top there, you can see it's plan, set up, model, develop, create, right? It's very nicely set up. It's very, very clear. It's very concise. There's lots of tutorials, as you said, right? And it's not just, hey, here's one video. It'll be, hey, here's like 10 videos, go through these one by one, top to bottom, and it will help you get through to learn this specific topic. And that's scattered throughout the entire documentation.
Yeah. So that's all of the API.
Yeah, so we had obviously mentioned the API, it being API first. And if you skip to the next slide, actually, you'll see that they do have Swagger files available. So if you can download those, you're essentially going to see what I'm showing you here. But everything, like I say, every single interaction that you can make to the system via an API is documented, full stop, right? It will give you, this is the endpoint, this is the data I'm expecting, the data needs to be of this specific type. Oh, by the way, here's a bunch of examples, And we're not necessarily going to give you examples in one language. You'll see there's examples in JavaScript, there's examples in C#, there's examples in Go. It gets to that level. And the thing I really have loved is you can also download or use via the web interface a bunch of Postman files. So now I don't even have to set any code up locally. I can just jump onto this, fork this collection, and I now have access to the entire API. Go to my Kontent.ai instance, grab an ID, grab an API token, and I can now start using this interface, just creating content, pushing content up, updating content, moving content around, do whatever I want to do, all the actions that I can do, just to figure out, okay, how does this work? What is it doing? If I pass this in, what does it do? If I pass this other thing in, what does it do? And I can then use that as part of my development, as part of my automation scripts, as part of my import scripts, whatever I need.
Absolutely. And then, but what we liked most about this, like Camrose had mentioned, is it isn't just for one language, right? We are .NET developers by trade. At that time when we were getting into this, Camrose had gotten into a little bit of JavaScript-based coding, but I hadn't done anything, so it was brand new for me. So the initial push for us was, how do we do this in .NET? And it wasn't the old like web forms or the old MVC stuff, but you got access to the latest and greatest from an SDK perspective, which is .NET Core or Blazor. And we found that executing a couple of commands to get your development set up, and just the way they run you through it. Here's how you set up if it's a Next.js app. Do this, this, and this. And it was very, very simple. And we loved that fact that it wasn't just one language. You could do it in multiples. And that kind of covered a lot of people.
Yep. And then there was a few other things that we did love about the developer experience. It is super simple to set up. As I actually mentioned, it's really most of the time you're just running a couple of commands. Even when the projects are up and running and you need to onboard a new developer, you don't have to install a whole ton of software and SQL Server and this ID, that ID, this specific version of a search provider. It's usually just clone a repo down and run a couple of commands. We did also like the fact that the skills that we learn with this are portable. I just mentioned the fact that most of the headless CMSs work in a very similar way with the APIs. The fact that if you learn React, it's not vendor specific, right? It's not a Kontent.ai specific version of React. It is just React, and you can use that across any other project as well. But also the skills are actually quite portable in the composable space itself. So if I've learned a headless CMS, I can get really quickly up and running with a headless CMS or a headless CDP or a headless personalization tool. I really did like that portability of the skills. Purely from an individual perspective, I'm kind of setting myself up and opening my skill set up for different jobs and a larger marketplace.
Yeah, and just the extensibility, being able to create another environment. So if you have a production project for production environment for Kontent.ai, being able to spin out another one for stage, another one for dev from a Kontent.ai perspective takes minutes, super simple. Again, webhooks, just the way they work in terms of the events they react to, helped us do a lot of customizations outside of the ecospace. So that kind of helped quite a bit in terms of how we would approach these differently. And then there are other things. So again, there's way too many things to go through, and we're pretty close to being more than half done. But one of the things for me, and I know Camrose will go a little bit deeper into the support part, but for me,
you love raising support tickets. That's what it is, right?
Yeah, sure. I love spending a lot of time collecting stuff I don't need to collect in order to give it to someone who takes a couple of days to figure out what the problem is. But all joking aside, that was the biggest feature, because the authors, whether they're customer facing, customer resources, or our team members, they just figure things out, or they just click on the chat and ask the question. Whether you ask a question about something content related, content entry related, or an API related, they answer you within minutes. And that was unheard of, at least back then. Now, I think pretty much quite a few of them have added these live customer reps. So you're not chatting with a bot. These are actual individuals that you chat with. They're very knowledgeable. They're very, very kind. And within minutes, you have someone telling you, if it's an issue, they'll look into it, or here's the solution to it. I couldn't think of any better way of servicing a customer from that perspective.
Yeah, I was surprised. Like I keep asking them stupid questions, which are not even anything to do with them. I've just done something stupid, right? And they'll take the time, they'll figure it out, and they'll reply. And it's instant. I'm not waiting around there spinning my wheels, saying, "Oh my God, what am I doing? I've just lost 2 days because I don't know what the hell I'm doing." Right? They are. So I was on a chat with them yesterday because I messed up a project space at 11:30 at night EST, right? And somebody responded to me within a few minutes and was on a chat with me for 30 minutes and solved my problem. It was, again, me being stupid, but they solved my problem. And so if you don't, the fact that I have to ship anything to them and I have to spend 2 days for a reply, only to then, for them to say, please send me this log. And then I send them a log and I wait another 2 days, etc., right?
And then you don't have to be a certified developer or certified anything to ask for help. So that's why, like, if one of the content authors from the marketing team is having an issue, why am I not being able to do this? Instead of reaching to us, they go directly to support and they get the answer. And I don't even remember the one time they came to us directly or after support, because the support took care of it. And then there's the editorial calendar.
This was a surprise little feature that appeared. Again, like same with the support. This wasn't something we were looking for. It was just like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is kind of neat. And this was one of these where you're able to go in and look back at the past and see what had been published on a specific day, and then you can schedule things to be published in the future. So you can, if you have a campaign launching, you can schedule those things to be launched, and you'll see that on this really, really clean, clear, concise interface, much like your Outlook calendar, right? Like on this date, this piece of content is scheduled to go live. You can click on it. You can go in, get more details. Obviously, then view the history. There's a couple of different views. There's a calendar view, and then there's a schedule view, like top to bottom. So it gives you a couple of different ways of viewing it. But yeah, really neat to track your content, track the progress of that content as well, because you can set something to be scheduled for a certain date, and then if it's delayed, then you can mark it as being delayed, or track it. And if it's on track, then there's also an option to say, hey, we're still on time, on track to hit this deadline.
Yeah, and this is the same area of the site where you also can see your tasks. Like everything is right there, and it's pretty neatly laid out. It's almost like having a content hub on top of your CMS. So it serves multiple functions. Now your team is able to collaborate, give each other tasks, and also look at what's coming forward and what has happened in the past. So I think that's a really neat feature. We just locked into it. And then the customizability, and we mentioned this a couple of different ways, but the beautiful thing about these headless CMSs is that you can modify the core. If you need additional capability, you have to add custom elements, customize them outside of your headless CMS instance, right? So what that means is when you need to upgrade, when things need to be done to the actual instance, nothing is going to break because nothing was modified in the core instance. So assume that you wanted to integrate with the third-party systems where you're showing a way for people to pick documents, or you want a Cloudinary integration, for instance, to pick assets, or you want an e-commerce integration to pick products for a specific piece of content. You just create it externally as an app external to the Kontent.ai instance, and use it within the Kontent.ai instance to use that functionality. And again, it doesn't break the core functionality of the site when the upgrades are done. And so far, we've probably like 11 to 15 custom elements, which do all kinds of things, from products to translations to all kinds of things. But we love the extensibility through the customization framework Kontent.ai gives us.
This was another interesting one, right? So with the majority of headless CMSs or SaaS-based systems, you're just on a system, right? You don't really know who else is on that instance with you. It's usually just a shared instance, and it makes sense. That's how the majority of these things are set up to be. But there are the Kontent.ai, and I haven't seen this from anybody else, and maybe they have it available and just haven't seen it. They do have an option available for what they call a dedicated infrastructure option. This is where they will set up a dedicated cloud instance just for you, and it's only your data that will be on that instance. So if you have some enhanced security requirements, or you have some legal compliance issues that you particularly need to deal with, then this is great, right? This is like almost like hosting it in your own private cloud, but with all the benefits of SaaS, with all the benefits of the upgrades, with all the benefits of it being managed by the Kontent.ai team. I know we work with a lot of large, like pharmaceutical, biotech, and legal customers in the legal space, and they like to have that separation, right? Just for their own internal compliance, not necessarily legal compliance, but they like to have that for their own internal compliance. And it does bring in some other benefits. Like if you did want to have some custom domains, then sure, you can have that as well. But I think the IP whitelisting, especially if you want to restrict access to your CMS only via a VPN, for example, then this is a really, really great option to have. Like I said, I haven't seen this available anywhere else, but it's nice to have this available.
Yeah, and also if you have zone requirements, right? So some companies I need it in this specific zone, and if the hosting provider doesn't provide it in those zones, this is a way to get around that, to say, okay, I need it in this zone, and they're able to work with you to get it out, rather than saying, we don't offer it, I'm sorry, you can use our system. This is a good way to provide that.
Yeah.
Before we get into questions, there's a QR code on the bottom right. That's where you should go register if you haven't already, because we have some post-presentation assets that we want to send. The only way we can send it is if we know your email address. So please use the QR code or the URL and go register so we can send you things. But we're more than happy to take questions. I know we have a few. All right, let me see. Goodness. All right, let me do this one. Why is workflow so important, especially for enterprise customers and organizations? Depends, right? The companies that we deal with have quite a few requirements. So let me put it this way. Say a publicly traded company needs a few things set out for the earnings call. So they have a piece of content which needs to not just go through a content author's process of authoring the piece of content. An editor will look at it, make changes, but then it has to go to legal review. Once it goes to legal review, they might have a regulatory department which has to sign off on it, and then you can schedule the piece of content to go out on a specific date and time. That's just a simple example, but you could even add workflows for language translations which come back, so that, say, if it was an automated translation, someone internal can then take a look at it, approve it before it goes to publishing. So there's several reasons why you would need a workflow. Those are a couple of examples.
Yeah, there's also other reasons, right? Like, so workflows are especially on these large enterprises with large content repositories, say, different pieces of content need to be approved by different departments and different teams. Like, there may be the news section, for example, may need to be approved by corporate affairs, whereas the learning and the training sections may need to be approved by that learning and the training team, right? Because they have different teams managing that content, and different teams with the expertise and the knowledge to know if the information being sent out is correct. Sometimes even the approval process itself isn't as simple as draft, ready for approval, approved. It could be draft, approval A, approval B, approval C, approved, right? So sometimes it does need to go through different people, and it does require different levels of approval based on content and the type of content.
Yeah, people and departments for sure. Like think about a product, right? Someone creates a product information, someone has to validate it, they have to attach images, things like that. Next one is speak of what made you choose Kontent.ai several years ago. What importance does the AI part play, and how you view the benefits? So when we've looked at it, it was content by Kentico. There was no AI part to it. But the gist of the question, which is what does AI play a part in it, is all the latest innovations content has brought recently, right? And some of it which you don't even know are coming, which we can't share as MVPs. But the AI part is how does AI play a role in content production? And content isn't just looking at it. Kontent.ai isn't just looking at it from the perspective of, oh, here's a ChatGPT-like tool that you can use to write content or do content, right? They're thinking about it from a whole 360 perspective of what does it mean to be a responsible citizen in the AI world. And they're being involved intentionally in these separate organizations or groups to be a responsible AI provider, so that they have some guidelines, they have some rules, they are evolving as more understanding of AI is coming out. So from that perspective, they're making a lot of effort. From the other perspective, they're not just looking at it from the perspective of it's just for content production. No, what are the problems can we solve? What are people doing often enough that we can automate it? We are creating web pages. How do we automate that? We are creating landing pages. How can we create a landing page for this person, knowing all the things that we know based on the project? So they're asking themselves questions like that, although they do have some simpler AI integration where you can do a feature toggle, come on in, and then be able to use in the content editor, be able to say, okay, you know what, generate 5 headings based on this, generate a piece of content on this specific thing. And it's able to generate that content just like how ChatGPT does. But this is your own instance. It's not shared with anyone else. So it's specific to that project and the client instance. So you do have tools like that. But I would keep an eye out and an ear out for what Kontent.ai has in plans, because what they have in plans, based on how responsible they're being, that's quite a few things to look forward to. So that's the .ai part, and I hope.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing here is obviously ChatGPT is huge. Everybody's raving on about ChatGPT, but we've also seen ChatGPT release the GPTs feature. So you can go in and customize a GPT for a specific marketplace. But think about that in the context of content. I don't want some generic content generated by ChatGPT. What I want is content that is relevant to my business and that portrays the way that my business wants to be portrayed, right? I want my specific knowledge to be used. So I think when this comes out, they will have a training model, and the training model will be your data, your CMS instance. And that will just, I think, be where the big differentiator is compared to ChatGPT. I can now generate content in the style of Carnivos, in the style of American Bath Group. And it's not just limited to text. You also have an entire asset library available. So it's going to be really interesting to see where this space ends up going. I don't know in terms of the asset library, so don't quote me on any of these, but it's going to be interesting. So I did see a question about the AI features.
Yeah. So I'm not sure about the licensing part. I do know that there's a feature toggle which enables the beta AI options, where it does help you create content in different types of fields, but I'm sure they have stuff on their website which gives you that option. Then Soumya had a question: does composable DXP replace monolith DXP in the future? What do you think, Kamran?
There's space for both, right? There's always different use cases. It's the same reason that we have sports cars and minivans and sedans and hatchbacks, right? There's always space for everyone in the market, and it's going to depend on your specific use case. If you need something highly scalable, globally deployed, yeah, composable is a way forward. But if you have smaller teams that are handling everything, then those traditional DXPs, all-in-ones, are going to be around.
Cool. We are running short of time, so any other questions which are added in the chat, will be sure to answer those. But again, if you need any help, even if it's advice, or you just want to talk about composable or what our thoughts are on it, we love being part of a community. We run several communities, and we are part of the group of people who really love sharing knowledge. Whether it ends up in business or not, that's immaterial. At the end of the day, it's mainly spreading knowledge, and that's what we've built this company on. So hopefully, if you have things, find us on socials, get in touch with us. We'll be more than happy to help. Like Anissa mentioned, please use that previous QR code link to register, so we can send you some material from this presentation. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.